This is Retirement Keys with Anthony Congemi from Crescent City Retirement Group. When a part of your financial strategy is out of tune, your long-term goals, your retirement savings, and your legacy can all suffer. With many years of experience in the financial industry, Anthony provides his clients and prospects with the information they need regarding Social Security, retirement income planning, wealth management, and much more. Listen in as we address your financial concerns and provide helpful solutions to put you on the path to achieving your retirement goals. And now, here is Retirement Keys with your host, Anthony Congemi.
Well, hello, and thanks again for joining us. My name's Anthony Congemi with Retirement Keys, our radio show that we put on through Crescent City Retirement Group, our retirement planning firm. We thank you so much for joining us each week on our show. I have our fabulous co-host with us that's here today, that's with us every week, Tony Shore. And we're really looking forward to a great show today on Social Security. But before we get started, I'd like to just introduce you again to our great co-host, Tony Shore. Tony, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, great to be here. And I'm excited about this one. And yes, Anthony, I am excited about a financial radio show. People might laugh, but it is fun. We have a lot of fun, and you always bring great information to the show. And I can't wait to talk about the topic you have for us today. I know you have a lot of educational information for us. It's going to be good. But first, I have to ask you about the Super Bowl. I think it was quite a game. I really enjoyed it. Although the outcome, kind of rooting for the underdog, the Bengals, right?
Yes, we were. Tony, as we were talking about before the show, the Bengals, I feel as an underdog. I mean, and I'm not a historian by any means as it relates to football, but I know that it's been, I believe, over 30 years, according to my 15-year-old, who really is
he's into it.
Quite the historian, said that they haven't even played in a playoff game. So the fact that they got into the playoffs and then they got all the way to the Super Bowl, we were certainly excited about the Bengals being in there. Of course, the Rams have been in multiple playoff games and Super Bowls. And so we were really excited about the underdogs. Then, of course, Burrows, and he was at LSU, I think it was 3 years back. So we had this LSU quarterback, and that was playing the game. So, and then they showed up, him and his wide receiver, and I think another fella too. I think there was three of them from that LSU team that played on the Bengals. And they really, what an amazing run they had. And then, as I mentioned before, we're still a little sore about that call that wasn't called about 3 years ago when we were playing the Saints were playing the Rams. And you may recall that pass interference that didn't get called. And that would have put us in the Super Bowl that year. And so, New Orleans, we try to forget, but it was a terrible call that wasn't called, that was missed.
Yep.
So I'm not a big fan of the Rams anyway, but yes, we wanted to see the Bengals win. Then they were winning through looked like the whole game, and then they fumbled up, didn't pick up that 1 yard at the end. But so it's kind of a letdown at the end there, Tony.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that was tough. That was a tough one. But fun to watch the game and get together with family, and I know you always enjoy that, so that's good. And
yes.
Now today we're talking about Social Security, and there's a lot of myths versus reality out there regarding Social Security, and a lot of things our listeners need to be aware of and how to maximize it. So I thought we'd talk about this a little bit today. And I think some of these refuse to die. A lot of people say, well, I can't count on Social Security isn't even going to be there by the time I retire. And I think that's a myth, right?
Yeah, that is a myth, Tony. And there are, Social Security right now, up until I believe 2035, they show even as a surplus every year that's going into the trust fund that funds Social Security. And then around 2035, it starts, they have to do something to start adjusting the numbers and working on that at that point. But for people that are, next, 20 years of retirement, I think that, it's pretty actuarially sound up until about 2035. So I would say that's a myth. So people that are, oh, I need to hurry up and start collecting my Social Security because it won't be here in 5 years. I think that's, obviously that's a total myth. And I think it should be good news for a lot of people that are pre-retirees. I mean, Social Security is certainly going to be a big part of your retirement. And Tony, as you know, when we talk about the keys to a stress-free retirement, we talk about the 5 aspects of retirement planning: estate and legacy planning, health care, investments, income, and taxes. But out of those 5 points, income planning is certainly a foundational piece to retirement planning because it's your income, right? It's foundational. And I would say, drilling down from that point, your Social Security strategy is certainly a foundational piece to your income plan. So if income planning is a foundational piece to a retirement plan, and then Social Security is a foundational piece to your income plan, right? Then Social Security's strategy is pretty important.
Yeah. Well, it is important to have a strategy, and you can maximize people don't realize, oh, I'm going to get what I'm going to get. Well, no, depending on the filing strategies you utilize, your check could be for more. So I think that's really important, Anthony. And, one thing that I think people don't understand is the full retirement age. They think, well, Social Security, when you should file is 62, or other people say it's 65, or I've heard 66 and 70. Well, there's a lot of different times you can file, starting at 62, going all the way up to 70. It could be 63 and 4 months, or 66 and 7 months, or 67. So, but when the best time for you personally is, everybody's situation is different, right?
Well, absolutely, Tony. So for starters, as you mentioned, full retirement age, I mean, that's going to depend on when you were born,
Yep.
right? So for instance, I'm 54. I was born in 1967. And so my full retirement age is 67. But, if you were born, depending on when you were born, it could be your full retirement age as far as Social Security is concerned, could be 66. It could be 66 and 4 months. It could be 67, 66 and a half. So, your full retirement age is going to land somewhere in there. Now, that's important because that just simply means that if you wait to full retirement age, FRA, or full retirement age, that you would get your full benefit, right? There would not be any reduction in your benefit. But if you started earlier than your full retirement age, then of course there's going to be some reduction in those benefits.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, if you take it early, like at 62, you're going to get greatly reduced benefits. And once you file, those are locked in. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful. And, the full retirement age has gone up over the years for a lot of folks. I know mine full retirement age is 67, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the best time for me to file either, does it?
No, it really doesn't, Tony, because when we look at our Social Security strategy, we're not just thinking about your full retirement age and what your benefits are, especially for married couples. We have to think about the filing strategies and the different strategies for a married couple, and that's going to depend on how much you put in and what your primary insurance amount or your full retirement age and what your payments are going to be, but then what your spouse put in and what her full retirement age is and what her primary insurance amount or payments are going to be. And then the age difference between the two of you too, Tony, because there's survivor benefits, and then a spouse may be able to collect off another spouse and let theirs continue to roll up and then switch over to their record later. So it's not just, when you think about, I know back in even myself, 10 years ago, or maybe a little longer, we would take a legal pad and a calculator and say, okay, what's the best time to start drawing. But really, Tony, it's a little more involved than that, as you know. And so this Social Security maximization report really looks at, life expectancy. It looks at, how long, what the average life expectancy is for a male and a female. And then it looks at your records, Tony, and it looks at your wife's records, and then the difference in age, and it looks at all of the different filing strategies and survivor benefit strategies, and really kind of pulls it all together, all that data together, Tony, to really come up with a Social Security strategy to really maximize what it is that you ultimately draw out. And as I mentioned, being that it's a foundational piece to an income plan, if you do a really good job on the maximization aspect of Social Security, then you can build your income plan with your investments around that maximization strategy to really overall enhance your retirement income.
Sure. And that's the key right there. And I know you have that maximization report that you can run for people. So let's talk about that a minute before we go to break. How can our listeners get a hold of that Social Security maximization report? I know you'll run it for them at no cost if they call and set up an appointment, a no-cost, no-obligation consultation with your office.
Yeah, Tony, and I'll even go one step further because we think it's such a pivotal and financial report that everyone should have. They could just call in or request it online at crescentcityretirement.com, or just simply call in, and we're happy to get that report run. And and we can review the report, whether come into the office, which of course we appreciate and enjoy, but we can also review it online through Zoom. We can review it by phone. So there's multiple ways we can absolutely get you the report. And we can review it however you would like. I mean, we can do it by phone, on the computer, through Zoom, or in the office. The other thing is, with the report, Tony, as you know, I know we have to go to break, but you'll be shocked. I mean, looking at sometimes looking at the worst strategy to the best strategy. I mean, you can you can be looking at $150,000 to $200,000 of additional benefits that could have been collected, provided everybody just lives to life expectancy, right? So it can be really significant.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be huge. And I think that's really important to note. But let's take a quick break here, and then we'll come back and continue this discussion. Listeners, you are listening to the Retirement Keys. I'm your co-host, Tony Shore, and I'm here with our host, Anthony Congemi. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with more.
You've been listening to our shows and advice on getting your finances in order and creating a retirement income plan that will last. Now is the time to take advantage of our special offer. This is Anthony Congemi of Crescent City Retirement Group, and we're now offering a complimentary gourmet dinner and retirement planning workshop. The 5 Keys to a Stress-Free Retirement. This is one workshop you won't want to miss. Call in the next 20 minutes for this no-cost offer. Seating is limited. Call Crescent City Retirement Group within the next 20 minutes at 504-828-2171. That number again is 504-828-2171.
And welcome back to Retirement Keys. I'm your co-host, Tony Shore. I'm here with the man with the plan, Anthony Congemi, and from Crescent City Retirement Group. And Anthony, great show so far. We're talking about Social Security and how it really is the foundation of so many retirement income plans. But one misconception out there is that it can be your retirement plan. But Social Security is not going to be enough, is it?
Well, I guess it depends, on the income need in retirement, but typically no. There's some, reports that show that Social Security accounts for roughly on average, roughly 40% of our overall retirement income plan. So typically, it's not going to be enough to really enjoy your retirement. But we do want to, but it's an integral piece of a retirement income plan. So we want to go into it with our eyes open. We want to make sure that we put a good strategy together. So we really rely heavily on that Social Security maximization report, because frankly, Tony, it's just an actuarial number crunching report that looks at all of the different filing strategies, and it looks at all of your benefits and your age and your full retirement age and what you put in, and it looks at your spouses, and then it really just blends the two together so we can really come up with a maximization strategy on Social Security benefits. And then you're right, it does help us build an overall retirement income plan around that Social Security strategy. So it is a foundational piece to any retirement income plan, which is so key. I mean, at the end of the day, Tony, when you think about retirement income planning and you've maximized Social Security and you've really positioned your assets well for distribution for those for the retirement income piece of your plan, and you've shored all that up, and you've eliminated any unnecessary fees, and you've really built a lean, transparent retirement income plan, and then the tax efficiency of all of that, the distribution strategy and how assets are taxed differently, of course, all of a sudden you could be looking at a retirement income plan that looks a lot better in terms of a net income to you than you were expecting, just by kind of, sealing up the leaks, Tony, and making sure that things are put together in the most efficient way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's huge, obviously. So, you need to be aware of these things. And I think a lot of people have a misconception. I think for most people, I've read that Social Security is only going to cover 30 to 40% of their retirement income. You don't want to take a pay cut in retirement. So that's why you need a retirement income plan in place. And Anthony, I know that's the main thing you help your clients accomplish. That's why you have to work with a financial services professional such as yourself. And I think that's just so critical. So, another thing I've heard, a myth that I used to believe this about Social Security, and I don't think it's true, and that's a lot of people think Social Security can't be taxed or won't be taxed.
Yeah, Tony. So that's a myth. It is true that you put into your Social Security with after-tax dollars. So in that regard, you might think, and that's why I think the myth is out there, is because people figure, well, hey, I put into my Social Security with after-tax money, so I've already paid taxes on that money.
Right.
So why should it be taxed?
Plus, it's a tax itself. They take it out of my paycheck as a tax. So
as a tax.
You're
right.
paying tax on a tax at that point when they pay you back.
Well, that's it, Tony. And so again, back to structure and income, your Social Security could be taxed. 50% of your benefit could be taxed, up to 85% of the benefit can be taxed. So in other words, Tony, let's say, you were getting $2,000 a month Social Security, and you were at 85% of that was being taxed. Well, somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,750 of the $2,000 a month would be considered taxable income, right? So the question is, when we're building a retirement income plan, we have to think about how assets are taxed. We have to think about how Social Security is being taxed. Do we have any after-tax or pre-tax dollars? What about our Roth IRA, which is all tax-free? Again, our after-tax dollars, which are taxed, based on capital gains and ordinary dividends. So all of these income sources, if you will, Tony, are taxed differently. Yeah. And so when you're building a tax-efficient retirement distribution plan, you're factoring all that in. And to really, bleed the income in, if you will, from the appropriate account, so we can maintain the most efficient tax distribution strategy that we can. And the other thing too, Tony, is those required minimum distributions. So we know that, in your IRAs and in your pre-tax dollars, 401ks, all these pre-tax dollars are all taxed as ordinary income. And we also know that at age 72, it's going to be mandatory that you take what's called required minimum distributions, or RMDs. So in our distribution strategy, Tony, because I would say another common misconception is, hey, I'll just defer all of my pre-tax dollars. I don't want to pay taxes on the money, so I'll just keep deferring. But then all of a sudden you're forced to take money out, and we don't know what the tax brackets are going to be at that time. So now we thought we were being tax efficient by just deferring pre-tax dollars all those years, and all of a sudden it blows up on us when we have to take out these mandatory distributions. So, at the end of it, Tony, and I know we're saying a lot here, but our listeners are, they're tuning in and they're well educated, and they keep up with information as it relates to retirement planning. So, I just want to say that your distribution strategy and how things are put together mean a lot as it relates to maximizing Social Security and as it relates to being tax efficient.
Sure. Well, and that's huge. And when you talk about taxes, it's interesting. And back to Social Security, there are actually states that can also, on a state level, tax your Social Security income. And I have that list right here. It's Colorado, Connecticut, Kansas, Minnesota. My home state of Minnesota taxes Social Security benefits. Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Vermont, Utah, or West Virginia. Fortunately, Louisiana is not one of them, and that's a good thing. They don't tax Social Security on a state level, at least.
Right.
So that's good, and I think that's interesting. Now, another misconception about Social Security is the COLA, and I'm not talking about Coke or Pepsi or RC. I'm talking about the COLA, the cost of living adjustment. That a lot of people say, that's a given and they're going to get that every year, but that's not true, is it?
No, not necessarily, Tony. It is definitely not true. Now, the cost of living adjustment that people saw just this past year, it was pretty sizable.
It was a good one. In fact, It's the biggest one since the 80s. What was it, 5.9?
Yeah, 5.9. And yeah, you're right. It goes way back from when we've seen anything like that. And I mean, rightfully so, Tony, because, you don't have to go far to see that, at the gas pumps and at the grocery store and everywhere in between, the cost of living certainly is on the rise. So we know inflation is here, and, we're not sure, how long this is going to last or how high it's going to go. But definitely things are, consumer goods and the like are costing more. And so having that inflation increase of that COLA, the cost of living adjustment, it was certainly warranted. But you're right, it was one of the largest in many, many years at 5.9. But then there's been years, Tony, where there have been no increase at all.
Let's talk, before we end the show, about that Social Security maximization report. This thing is huge because everybody's situation is different. And so you input a little bit of personal information, your age, your full retirement age, things like that. And then it runs a report, does like 20,000 calculations, and it tells you what the sweet spot is for you, the best time, optimum time to file, and your spouse as well, the spousal benefits and strategies to really maximize those benefits, right?
It is, Tony, and as you mentioned, 20,000 calculations. I mean, look, again, we used to sit around with 10, 12 years ago with retirement planning and with a legal pad and a calculator. But let's face it, technology is such today, and then the complexity of the different filing strategies, and then of course Social Security, just your full retirement age and your PIA, your primary insurance amount, is an aggregation of the top 35 years of your working years. And then some people have pensions, Tony, and if they have a state pension, there may be a government pension offset or what they call a windfall provision. And so all of that, and then the different ages of the spouse, and then what's the spouse going to receive for a survivor benefit, and how all of that is built in, Tony, to an overall, retirement income plan. It could be very, critical to have all those pieces in harmony, if you will, and working together. And so, yes, the foundation of a retirement plan is income planning, and the foundation of your income plan is to maximize your Social Security strategy. And that report, Tony, that Social Security maximization report that we're talking about, is free of charge, and we want to provide it to all of our listeners. So all you have to do is go online to crescentcityretirementgroup.com and say, hey, I want a Social Security maximization report, or call our office at 504-828-2171 and just say, I was listening to Anthony and Tony on the radio, and I want to get one of those Social Security maximization reports. That report is something that will absolutely be helpful for you as it relates to filing for your Social Security, to make sure that you understand all of the different options available.
Exactly, Anthony, and that is so critical. Well, we're out of time for today's show, so listeners, that does it for today's episode of Retirement Keys with our host, Anthony Congemi. Thank you for listening to Retirement Keys. Don't pay too much for taxes or retire without a sound income plan. For more information, please contact Anthony Congemi at Crescent City Retirement Group. Call 504-828-2171 or visit the website at crescentcityretirement.com. All matters discussed during this show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. Anthony Congemi and Crescent City Retirement Group are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency.